Hey everybody, we have lived in Portugal for the past year, and oh my goodness, there are so many great things about living in Portugal, and there's so many pros, but there are some cons coming from an American perspective, and again, everything is subjective, right? So what we think is a little bit of a turnoff might be a turn on for somebody else. So in this video, we've highlighted our 8 pros and cons of living in Portugal. We are Dennis and Min. Come join us on our traveling adventures around the world. Oh yeah, and before we get any further, please like and subscribe to our channel. That would really help us out a lot. And if you do so right now, I will show you a picture of Jesus doing a drum solo. Hey, welcome back. So we are going to get right into the 8 pros and cons of living in Portugal. So number 1 on the con list would be smoking. So Min and I do not smoke. We've never smoked. And of course, smoking in many parts of Europe and Asia, other parts of the world that we've been to, it's just very culturally accepted to smoke cigarettes. And vaping, of course, is very popular among the younger population. But you'll notice about Portugal and other parts of Europe, there's a lot of wonderful, beautiful cafes where they have outdoor seating, and it opens up to the beach area or these nice views. Just to be able to people watch, and it's very nice. So as a general rule in Portugal, if you are sitting outside, that is the smoking section. So if you don't like smoking, are allergic to it as we are, typically we found in most places indoors is going to be safe. So that is con number 1. You are going to find that a lot of people smoke cigarettes out and about in Portugal. Con number 2 of living in Portugal would be dogs and cats. There's a lot of stray animals there. Many people take them in, and even though it seems to be that there's this thing about barking dogs, they just bark all day, all night. You know, they're there for security for the owners, and maybe somebody walks by, they bark, right? And if it's a somewhat heavily trafficked walkway or street, maybe there's dogs barking all the time. Where we have found a place to live in Nazaré, we have not had that experience. Yeah, we do hear some dogs barking on occasion, but it's not constant. And so, but we do hear that complaint about others living in Portugal too, that there's just a lot of barking dogs because the owners are away and maybe during parts of the day, so there's a little separation anxiety perhaps. Another thing is with regards to the locals there especially, they don't have the same appreciation for dogs that we might have in the US. For example, it has been said and seen by many, I have not seen this so much personally, but they just don't seem to take good care of their dogs. They leave them outside, tied to a post, and maybe they left some water and a little food, and maybe it's in the hot sun for many hours of the day. So you do hear a lot about that in Portugal. And these are the nicest people in the world as a whole. And it is a little bit surprising to find that they just treat dogs a little bit differently. For them, I think maybe it's more just they're there as security for the household, even though Portugal, as I've stated in my other videos, is one of the safest countries in the world. Doesn't mean that they don't have some level of small crime and whatnot. But just know that you might see a lot of stray dogs and cats in many parts of the country, and don't be surprised if you see dogs just, maybe not as well cared for as what you might see back in the US. Okay, con number 3 of living in Portugal is when you go out to a restaurant, go out to eat, it's not automatic like in the US where they're just gonna come out and bring you some ice waters or tap water. It is something that you have to ask for, and if you just ask for water, they will bring you bottled water, which you will pay for. It's not expensive, but you will have to pay for that bottled water, and they have different sizes, of course, and know that when you order, bottled water especially, it's going to be two options, usually the still and the carbonated, right? So just make sure that if you order water and you're looking for one or the other, that you're specific with them. And they don't always offer water with ice. So they're just not big on ice over there in Portugal, but they do often have it available, but it's just not something that they automatically include with your drinks and with water. And then moving on to con number 4, are screens. For some reason, we haven't noticed, and certainly in our own residence there in Nazaré, there's no screens on the windows or on the sliding glass doors. I don't know why that is. I do know there are some places where you can get screens ordered and custom made, but it's not something that's just automatic like you find in the US, where most all homes, especially newer, would have screens. And so just note that that is something that you might have to deal with in terms of some flying insects if you leave the windows open. Okay, so we're gonna get right into number 5 con of living in Portugal would be GPS. Now I mentioned this in my how to drive in Portugal video. The GPSs are just not very reliable over there in Portugal. We have it automatically on our new car. The GPS is lousy. And on my iPhone, the pre-installed map GPS is lousy in Portugal. It works okay in the US, but not over there. You might be better off with Waze or maybe Google Maps. But drop me a comment, let me know what's been successful for you, but you do have to be careful. The GPS is not always reliable over there. Another con, number 6, would be gas prices, also known as petrol. Now they do have diesel also over there and electric and hybrid cars, but they're gasoline powered cars. You're gonna pay quite a bit more there in Portugal for gas than you do in the US. I think right now, here we are in mid-2024, the gas prices are pushing between $6.50 and $7 a gallon. And of course, they go by liters over there. But I don't know, the way the prices are going up here in the US for gas, at least here in Hawaii, where I'm at now, they're not too far behind that mark over there. But do know that it's going to be a little bit more expensive to drive over there in Portugal because of the gas prices. And that's going to move us on to number 7 con of living in Portugal is VAT, VAT. So that is a tax that they impose on all goods coming in from outside of the country. And that tax is 23%. So just note that that's going to be applied to anything that you bring in from outside of the country. That will add up. Con number 8 is bureaucracy. Portugal is known for its bureaucracy, and I would almost say they're proud of that fact. The government, not the people, because it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of things that are getting better. A lot of the locals complain about the bureaucracy, and for those like ourselves that have applied for visa status and for immigration purposes, there's all types of visa programs that people can apply to, but there's such a backlog, and this has been happening for many, many years, and it continues to this day. But it's also with a lot of other government agencies there. It's just something that people get accustomed to and used to, is all this bureaucracy. So it doesn't mean that things eventually don't get done, but you just have to be very flexible with regards to that bureaucratic system in many agencies over there in Portugal. So that concludes our 8 cons of living in Portugal. Let's get on to the positive side of things here and get into the 8 pros of living in Portugal. All right, getting into the 8 pros of living in Portugal. Now, there are so many pros of living in Portugal, so I'm just choosing 8 to keep it simple because we don't want this video to ramble on forever. So pro number 1 of living in Portugal would be the quality roads and infrastructure. Now, it hasn't always been that way, but Portugal has invited a lot of investment over the recent years. And of course, they have the support of the EU dollars that has been funneling into Portugal. So they've got really great connectivity, and internet speeds are pretty consistently amazing throughout the country, even in the rural areas, I found. And you've also got wonderful roads and bridges that are just kept up in really, really good condition compared to where I'm coming from in Hawaii, where the roads are pretty terrible overall. So that's a great thing when you're in Portugal, is that connectivity and also being able to get around conveniently on these roads without any problems. And they have a really fairly good public transportation system in a lot of the connecting the cities via trains and buses. Number 2 pro of living in Portugal would be the ability to be cashless. So almost everywhere you go, you can pay with your debit card from your bank or credit card. And the other thing I appreciate about Portugal is that you don't really need to order checks. Like in America, we're so used to having to order checks from the bank, write checks to everybody. They don't do that over there, maybe on a real small scale, but I haven't had to write a single check over there. And what's great is you have your bank information that you just pass along to somebody else, an entity, an agency, the government, whether it's paying your insurance, your property taxes, or some other vendor. You can just pay them with your bank account and vice versa. So you don't have to exchange a check, wait for a check in the mail. Can you just go online or onto your mobile app on your phone, and within seconds you can send and receive payments from people, and you have confirmation and a receipt, and it just makes a lot of sense. And I wish the U.S. did that. So another great pro of living in Portugal is the ease of banking. Number 3 pro is that they've got gas stations on the highways and the freeways everywhere you go throughout Portugal. It's very convenient, so you don't have to exit off the freeway in order to find a gas station. Now, they're not always that far from the freeway to find, but you have to get off the freeway. So these are literally like a rest stop right on the freeway where they have a gas station, and oftentimes a little cafe or a restaurant where you can get some food and a meal and drinks, and then be on your way again very easily, just right there back on the freeway. So that's a great pro of living there, is that ease of being able to fill up your car when you need to on the road. And then number 4 pro of living in Portugal are roundabouts. I also mentioned this again in our How to Drive in Portugal. They have roundabouts everywhere you go, and it really does make for the ease of driving through these towns and cities. And oftentimes you can do so without actually stopping, because you just keep going through these roundabouts and on to the next area and around another roundabout. And so you rarely have to stop. Rarely do you see 4-way stops, traffic signals. They do have them in many places, but more often than not, you're going to be finding yourselves in these roundabouts. So they're very efficient ways of getting around. And number 5 pro of living in Portugal is that it's not a tipping culture like we have in the US. So it's not expected when you're out at a restaurant or somewhere else that you have to tip for that service. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't tip. Okay, it's always welcome. It doesn't even have to be 10 or 15 or 20%. Any amount that you were to leave is going to be appreciated, but generally it's not expected. Number 6 pro of living in Portugal is the laid-back lifestyle. Now, certainly in the bigger cities like Lisbon and like Porto, it may not be so laid back, but in a lot of the areas outside of the big cities, life is pretty simple. Things move kind of slow. Certainly where we live on the Silver Coast in Nazaré, it is very laid back, very chill. We like that. We like that. So generally you're going to find that across Portugal, where people really experience that laid back lifestyle, both from a local perspective as well as an expat perspective. And that is going to get us into number 7 pro of living in Portugal, is that you don't just have the mainland of Portugal, you have these beautiful islands that are fairly easy to get to by plane, and you can be there within 1 to 2 hours, you can be in the Azores. You can be at the Madeira Island where Funchal is. And these are beautiful, beautiful volcanic islands. Madeira has very similar qualities to Hawaii, believe it or not, both in scenery and in weather. And so it's just nice if you want to feel like you're living on an island for a period of time or visit an island. You've got those beautiful islands right off the coast there of Portugal, and then Madeira is off of the coast of Morocco, actually. And you have these beautiful, beautiful escapes to get to. So you have that diversity, but yet these are still very, very Portuguese islands. And you're going to find that the culture, the festivities that they engage in there are just like what they do on the mainland. Okay, and that's going to lead us to number 8 pro of living in Portugal would be, without a doubt, the lower cost of living. Again, this is coming from the U.S. perspective. You're going to find most everything is at a lesser cost. Not gasoline, but most everything else. And so it does make your finances go a little bit further to a lot of bit further when you're living there in Portugal. All right, so that's going to conclude our 8 pros and cons of living in Portugal. As I mentioned initially, there are so many pros of living in Portugal, but we have to limit this video to so long. But I hope you have enjoyed watching. And if you want to know more about living life in Portugal, please check out our other videos that we've done on how to drive in Portugal and maybe some of the best places to retire in Portugal as well. And then we will see you next time. Again, please like and subscribe. See you again.